Hello crafty friends and welcome back. This is Jenny from Polly's Paper Studio. Today I am combining my two loves of paper crafting, and that is of course cards, but also pockets with tags. So today the card has a pocket on the front and I've tucked extra tags into it. I'm using a beautiful collection from Pink Paisley. This is the Together for Christmas, and I was so inspired by the beautiful natural ephemera pieces and the gorgeous plaid. So stick with me and we'll make this together. I want to work on my pocket first because I want to get this big scoreboard out of the way. So what I've got is a couple of squares here of pattern paper, and this is that Together for Christmas paper, and it's from Pink Paisley. I like both sides, so I'm going to utilize both sides of this pattern. My largest square here is 5 3/8, and then I have my alternate side, that's the plaid. I cut a square that is 5 1/4, and then I just lined it up on my guillotine cutter and cut that from end to end. So that gives me the triangle that will fit into the bottom, that will create the pocket. And because I took off 1/8 of an inch, I'll have room for my cardstock border, which is this beautiful flat charcoal gray color. I cut my square for this at 6 1/2 inches, only because I do not like to do math and measuring. I just want to be able to plonk that right in the middle and score around it. So what I did, I don't know if you can see as easily on camera as I did in person, was I lined up this triangle. I cut it the same way as the first one with the corners of the larger piece of patterned paper. So I know that that's going to reach each of those corners, and I just made a pencil mark right there and right there. So I know now that when it's all folded around, it's going to fit flat. So then what I can do is take my piece of paper here to my scoreboard, and then I lined up my pencil mark with one of the grooves and just scored it all the way down. So now it is easy to fold. It's a nice crisp edge and it's right in the center, so I can work that pocket around the pattern paper. So I did put some double-sided adhesive tape on that already, and then I can just fold that paper around. So I'll do that very quickly. So I'll just line that right on up to the fold line and press that into place. I want to do both sides. If you want to, at this point, you could use your bone folder and get a nice crisp edge, but I think it folded okay. Now, remove your adhesive tape from your second piece and flip that over. Now you see we have some tails that we need to cut off before we add this to our cardstock layer. So just follow that right along, nip off that edge for both sides. And now what we're gonna do is add this to the cardstock that is for the base. Now this one is cut 5 1/2 inch square, so that's going to leave that nice border, and I'm going to treat this as the square and still have the border, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'll just line that up here. It's more important, I think, to get it even at the top. If there's any room for error, it will be where you're going to hide that extra cardstock under the next layer of pattern paper. So here is that plaid. Again, I've already put adhesive on that, so let's pull this tape and stick it down. One really good thing about adding your pocket this way, instead of just flat onto the pattern paper here, is that there's a little bit of extra room. So if you want to put additional items in here besides the tags that would fit, and it's not going to cause this to lose its shape. So now what we want to do is line up our triangle. Let's see, maybe this will work better this way. And get that nice even border. It's meant to go all the way edge to edge with the pocket that we just added, so it will be fairly easy to line up, and you're still going to have the nice black border of the bottom cardstock. So here's our pocket, and I think that looks really nice because you've got the smaller, more condensed pattern that's darker here, and this is more lighter and a larger concentration of the florals. So I put this on foam with more double-sided adhesive tape, and we'll add that to the card. I've already started that card. Inside there is some coordinating cardstock. I'll leave a spot for a sentiment to be added before this is finished. And then I've pulled some green cardstock. This is a very non-contrasting pattern of green. It matched the stripe in the plaid so perfectly, so I thought that would match really well. And I'm just going to add this to the base of the card, and this will be flat, so there's no extra layers here. We're going to get all the dimension we need from the pocket and the embellishments. So let's pull this tape off and add it. I think it's always easier to add that without getting it crooked if you pull the card open and have a flat surface. So just kind of eyeball that. Those borders are easy to get if they're all even. So here is our card base. You can tell it's already getting pretty thick, and then we're going to add this, so that is going to be a ginormous jump in dimension and thickness. So let's put this on. I put that tape on here. I'm going to come back in with my Tombow Mono Multi or Tacky Glue. I've been liking both of those recently. This is just the one I happen to have brought down, and put an extra layer of adhesive on foam, and it's just a security measure to know that all of that work you're doing is going to stay in place. So put this on now right in the center, keeping an eye on where that pocket's going to fall because you don't want it to be sideways, and add that. Now that green is a little bit of a bigger border, and I did that intentionally so that it would show off that gorgeous coordinating green. Give it a little pressure while it sets up. Now the fun part, I've pulled these images from the ephemera pack. This one I added a little bit of heavy cardstock to, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But this collection from Pink Paisley has so many really beautiful nature-inspired florals. There's some foiling on these different layering bits. These trees are a little bit whimsical. There's a lot of foliage, some pretty sentiments. So you'll have lots of fun picking through this collection if you pick it up. And then there's also some really nice large sentiments. I keep my ephemera in these little boxes that I pick up from Hobby Lobby, and they're just meant to be for picture storage for 4x6 pictures, but these work so great. You can dig through them and pull out the ones you want, and everything stays contained, and then they all fit in the box perfectly, so they're easy to organize. Now this bingo card really was where I started because of course I think they're really vintagey and beautiful. Now I think that birds are also a good Christmas theme, and even though this isn't necessarily Christmassy, it is a winter bird, so I thought that worked pretty well. I've got a die cut doily here. There's not a lot of room because we've basically taken half of the front of the card away, but there's just enough room for a small doily. This is just cut from crisp white cardstock, and I'm going to add that with a little touch of hot glue in the center. It's fairly delicate, so there's not a whole lot of room for adhesive behind it. I've put my frame, this was like a buffalo check, onto some thicker cardstock. That's because part of this will overlap that edge, and I don't want this to be weak or create a place where the tags could get stuck. So I've got that adhered to the cardstock, and then I've put my adhesive only on the left hand corner. That way I'm not going to accidentally adhere this to the back of the card, and then nothing will fit in the pocket because it's sealed up. So that is that base, and then I want to sort of measure it out before I stick it down permanently, because I do want everything to be basically lined up with the bottom of this pocket. So maybe I need to put that down a little bit. And let's just make a visual reference where I'm gonna add that. The scalloped edge on this is really pretty too, I think. It adds a lot of detail. So here is the first background, and then I'll bring in that bingo card. This I have put on foam spacers because we're building dimension again on the front, so this will add a lot of depth. I really like this color on red. I mentioned in my blog posts earlier today that I seem to have found many ephemera packs that combine the red and the blues together, so it seems to be a bit of a theme for me this year, and that is awesome. All right, one more time I'm gonna move that bird down into place. I've got a couple of extra elements here that I want to place behind it, sort of, and I want to make sure that I get that lined up pretty well. So I'm gonna add that right about to the 8. This is just a die cut snowflake. I cut that and then added a little bit of stickles to it just so it would be a little bit extra sparkly, and then you got more sparkle out of this sweet little die cut star from glitter cardstock. This is a pretty color I originally picked up for fall projects, but I really think it works so nicely with this because you'll see in a minute it sort of matches the center of the flowers that I picked. So I've already added my tape to my bird die cut, and it's so nice that it has that pretty white border so that it will match the border on the outside of my card and look like it was meant to be that way. I'm just going to add it right here and overlap those extra details that we just added. I wouldn't put more dimension under this one because it does have a couple of pieces that are going to overlap just a little bit, and that's fine because the tags will go into the pocket easily, but I don't think you'd want to add too much dimension between here and there so that they could become fragile. So here are those flowers that I mentioned. And these are from Prima. I picked these up from the Funky Junkie Boutique. The center of them is gold, but it isn't like a super shiny Las Vegas gold. It does have a little bit of age to it, so it's not like super contrasty, sparkly gold shininess. And I'm just going to cover up a little bit of what is here. It's just a little bit of foliage, and I think that is going to make a nice arrangement. Yeah, I'll pick on my glue gun, but I'm telling you, it still works good, so I'll keep using it. And I put a little bit of twine bows just on the edges there, just for a little bit of extra texture and detail. And maybe it looks like a nest. So here's the base in our pocket. What we need to do now is create our tag. And I basically pulled other pieces of that ephemera from the pack that I liked and I thought went really well with that. So these two are just exactly as they came out of that ephemera pack. That beautiful floral with the off green, sort of bluish green leaves. And I just punched that hole so that it would fit an eyelet and put some twine. That is waxed twine, so it won't ravel, and it will not lose its shape either. This is a beautiful sentiment that came from the ephemera pack, and I liked these two together. It would be busy if more of the tag showed, but because this is quite a large sentiment, you're only getting a little bit of the floral around the edge, and so I think that looks really lovely. Now, I'm not using any dimensional element between the papers and the background on this because I don't want any part of that to get stuck when they get moved into the pocket. It's okay to add it to the top because that's not going to be underneath of the pocket, so we can add a little bit of interest there. Here is my, let's do this one next because it needs to sit with some glue. I really love that bluey green color. So this tag is made with the offcut from the pocket, and you could use either side, but I like that the plaid here works, and then it's all going to coordinate with the front of the card. This is just a stitched edge tag, and I put an eyelet through that as well, and then more of that twine. Here's my image. Instead of putting a doily on this one, I'm just going to add a couple pieces of this fishtail banner, and that's going to act as a filler for the front of the card. It has a stitch detail as well, so it does add a nice little bit of something textury. I cut two that are the same size, and these are more of the offcuts, so I really did get a lot of use out of that one single sheet of paper. I'm just going to offset them so that you don't lose detail from that extra fishtail on the end. And then I'm going to measure where I want this to go because I'm going to put this other snowflake on here, and I want to make sure that I don't cover up anything important. There's a visual reference to that line. That's so nice when you work with plaid, is you can line things up pretty evenly without measuring. This one, again, has that great scallop border, so that's getting extra detail without even trying. And remember that these do not get any dimension so that they sit in the pocket. Here is that other snowflake, and what I want to do is I'm going to put a little bit of my Tombow on here, and then I'm going to set my acrylic block on it so that it will hold it down while that glue sets up. Here is that really big block, and now let's work on the other tag while that glue is drying. So for this tag, I did a similar base, so it has the plaid and the eyelet and the twine. That's all the same. Now for this one, I'm going to put a doily that is the same as the one on the front of the card. What could you put in the pocket besides these tags? Maybe you have some family photos of a special holiday that you want to include, or gift cards. That is a great way to present them without it just being, here's your card, Merry Christmas. You get a little gift out of it too. Here is the other sentiment, and isn't that so sweet, that buffalo check on the plaid? You wouldn't think it would work, but it really does. I'm going to aim this a little bit lower because I want to leave room for the charms that I'm going to add. Here is another one of those stars that I cut from the glitter paper, and this time I'm going to use my tiny attacher and just adhere that very easily. Also, that's a nice little extra fun detail. And then here is a bow that I tied with wrinkle ribbon. This comes from Really Reasonable Ribbon. And then I've put a couple little charms here. A great place to get charms is the Funky Junky Boutique. And this bow is going right underneath that eyelid, so we don't lose that detail. And it just frames the top of that picture so beautifully. There's a couple of strings here. I'm going to get after those real quick. Sometimes the twine gets a little bit hairy on the ends, but you can just clip that off very easily. Okay. So here are our 3 tags, and they are ready to add to the pocket. So what I'm thinking that I want to do is feature this first tag on the left and closer to the top, because that's where the bow is and the charms. So let's put that one here. And then we'll break up that plaid with this gorgeous Good Tidings of Comfort and Joy. I really love those colors. I think they're extra festive. And then last but not least is the card with the bell. So you want that one to be in front because it does have more dimension, and you don't want that to be stuck behind anything. And we'll just slide that right in here. So now you've got a pocket with tags and a card all in one. So that is all for our project today. If you look in the description, you will find links to the Funky Junky Boutique and Really Reasonable Ribbon, and you will also find links to all of our social media sites as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave me a comment and give me a thumbs up. If you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.